in the Obama administration, and Major Glenn Ignazio, a retired Air Force Special Operations commander who worked on combat rescue missions, previously negotiated a hostage release in the Middle East. Thank you both for coming on the program. Appreciate it. Glenn, let me start with you in terms of the logistics. How is this going to work? I mean, are like 50 people going to be brought into one place and 150 brought into the same place? I mean, logistically, how does something like this work?
Yeah, it's not going to be pulled together in one place. And the reason for it is, think of that as a center of gravity. If all the prisoners of war, or excuse me, the hostages, pardon me, was in one place, it'd be easy for them to be taken by the IDF, and Hamas loses all their bargaining chips. But what they're scheduled to do is eliminate any problems by releasing 10 hostages per day. One of the other things, though, is that Hamas made it also an item that the overhead surveillance would be removed during this time so that Hamas's hiding locations wouldn't be detected. So it's really going to be one of these things of a very delicate transition.
Has that been agreed to, though, the elimination of the monitoring?
No, nothing's been agreed to. That was one of the conditions.
Right.
So I don't believe that has been formally approved yet, but it was one of the items listed.
Right. No, but Joel Rubin, let me read you. This is from Netanyahu's statement before the cabinet meeting tonight. He said that all of the security agencies fully support it. They've made it completely clear in their professional assessment that the security of our forces will be ensured during the pause, and that the intelligence effort will be maintained in those days. They have made it clear not only will the war effort not be harmed, it will enable the IDF to prepare for the continuation of the fighting. That doesn't sound like someone who's willing to give up on surveillance.
No, not at all, Dan. And we've discussed this, right? If Israel were to go blind over Gaza, that would enable Hamas to essentially regroup itself. And so I am seeing some reporting about perhaps 6 hours a day of no overflight. Fortunately, there are other ways to gather intelligence than just purely through overflight surveillance. But even that is a give. But if the intelligence chiefs of Israel think that they can get through that, and that getting the hostages out is going to occur, and that's worth the trade-off, then so be it. But certainly Israel cannot go blind for 4 straight days over Gaza.
Joel, is this thing going to actually happen? I mean, yeah, and I only ask that because it seems that there are basic agreements here, right? But, as Glenn was pointing out, different organizations are actually holding different hostages here. There's so many different pieces. The leaders of Hamas aren't even on the ground there. They're in Qatar and other places trying to communicate, et cetera. I mean, are they going to be able to actually execute on making this kind of deal happen when Hamas is calling it a truce and Israel's calling it a war?
Dan, I think for this first round, there's a high likelihood of yes. This is, in a way, the low-hanging fruit. These are the easiest people to return. These are likely individuals who Hamas has control over, children, women, sort of the kinds of people they can justify giving back to Israel. After this, it gets much harder, and I think that's where we're going to see a lot of roadblocks, and I think we're also going to see international pressure on Israel as well to maintain pause, a truce, a ceasefire, whatever you want to call it, right? And to not go back into kinetic warfare. And so I think we're going to probably see this back, and then it's going to get very hard after that.
Joel, do you expect that the courts are going to create any roadblocks here? I mean, one of the conditions is that the victims of the Palestinians, presumably Israeli victims, of the Palestinian prisoners can appeal to the Israeli Supreme Court. Do you see that potentially throwing a wrench into any of this?
My God, it's going to be an emotional moment, isn't it? The Israeli families who are victims of Palestinian terrorism, they get to veto, essentially. That's the law in Israel, and they'll have a day to make their case. But even yesterday and today in the Knesset, Israeli family members of the kidnapped Israelis were shouting and banging the drums to get their people out. I think it's going to go through. I do think it's going to be very difficult. It's going to really put Israeli politics in trauma for the next couple of days. But I do think that there's enough momentum here, and there were enough votes in the cabinet. The full cabinet ended up approving this with only 3 no votes, very small negative vote. So I do think the momentum is there, but it's going to really take a toll on Israeli politics.